לא לחבר אותי לכלב.
Okay, the recording is working for the cloud. I don't know why, but the recording for the YouTube cloud doesn't work. So I hope that it will be in our Zoom channel so I can take it up. Tech darling.
Yes,
שיהיה הרבה בהצלחה.
What do you mean?
I know that you start a new course.
אוי, עוד לא התחלתי להתכונן, למה הזכרת לי?
יסכומה כזה. It's happened even all these years.
טוב,
I can bring you אקמול, טקסט.
מה את אומרת?
אני יכולה להביא לך אקמול.
אקמול, תביא לי אלכוהול.
רגע.
אני מול הטלוויזיה, ביי ביי.
ביי, זה בסדר?
אני לא רואה את זה.
גאטו נגרו.
אני לא שותה אלכוהול, מה, אני רק מתפטפט.
איי. עכשיו יש כאן את ה... We have Jimmy now, a missile from Taiman, from the Houthim. So half of Israel is now in the bomb shelter. One missile. And to take down one missile, it's כמה? 2 מיליון או 2 ביליון דולר?
לא, רק מיליון כנראה.
So it costs a lot of money just to take down one missile.
דלית?
כן?
מיסייל, לא מיסל.
מיסייל.
Thank you very much.
ורדה, היא מדרום טנסי, אל תגידי לה.
מה אמרת?
היא מדרום טנסי, שם מבטאים את זה אחרת.
אחרת.
6 o'clock. Hi, B. Six of us. ראית טקטוק שהיום כיפור נדחה? בוטל?
למען, לסוכות?
לזום בשישי שבת.
לא ראיתי.
יהיה זום שישי שבת. גשמה is here.
גשמה, hello גשמה.
Hi גשמה. So long time.
I know. Sorry, I had some difficulty signing back in, so I'm a little late.
We miss you a lot.
Well, I'm so sorry. It took me such a long time with this other job I had, and yeah, I just didn't have the time. It's always around this time of the year when His Holiness gives teachings, all my teachers come here, and I just had one thing after the other. I couldn't say no. So my apologies.
So I apologize, but now in Israel we are waiting for one missiles from Taiman, from the Houthim. So there will be people that wrote me down that they are in the bomb shelter, so cannot be here. I've been in the bomb shelter now, but now we go out from the Galil. So I'm here, but if you see me running around, so it's because that I had to go.
You have to go into the shelter. Okay, I understand. I also understand that there are commemorations today. I mean, because of October 7th, people get together to commemorate. Yeah, I know. All right. Well,
okay, so you're co-host now, and hi everyone. I'm very, very sorry, but the YouTube channel doesn't work. I don't know, something with my password doesn't work. So I'm recording, and 2-3 days after I will put it up.
Okay, great. Thank you, Dalit. All right. So as usual, we start with a meditation. To set the right kind of motivation. So as always, visualize the object of refuge, Buddha Shakyamuni, in the space in front of you, and the object of bodhicitta, all sentient beings surrounding you. Those beings we have a hard time with, who we don't like or who don't like us, seated in front of you. And then remembering that our differences are outweighed by all that we have in common with sentient beings. Let's generate affectionate love. A feeling of closeness, of acceptance, a sense of sentient beings being a part of us. And therefore, a deep sense of care for their well-being. And then focusing in particular on their endless sufferings. Having to carry the burden of the 5 aggregates and all the other sufferings generate great compassion. An affectionate mind that wishes from the depth of your heart. May these sentient beings, may all sentient beings be free from all their suffering and its causes. And may I personally be able to help them, guide them in the process of overcoming these obstructions. And your great compassion then gives way to the altruistic attitude that is determined to take personal responsibility for the welfare of each and every sentient being. And since we can only be really effective in helping sentient beings to overcome suffering and its causes once we become enlightened, let's then generate bodhicitta. That aspires to remove all obscurations from our mind and attain the enlightened state of a Buddha for the benefit of every sentient being. And then let's also today in particular honor all the victims of the attacks on October 7th, 2023, and dedicate today's class to all these victims of the attack, as well as to all the victims of the war that followed and continues to this day. So with this in mind, let's recite the prayer. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the accumulation of merits, of practicing generosity and so forth, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the accumulation of merits, of practicing generosity and so forth, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the accumulation of merits, of practicing generosity and so forth, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. Okay. Great. Now I've got a few questions that I want to answer today. Oh, sorry. I'm going to show them on the screen. Oh no, actually first we'll do the Lamrim, of course, the Lamrim outlines. So far, can you see the outlines?
Yeah, we can see it. Thanks.
Great. All right. So I ask you in the past to take the time to reflect on the suffering of the different life forms in the lower realms, in particular, in the human, in the animal realm, as well as in the Preta realm, in the hell realm, and of course, as an alternative to thinking of these realms as actual physical places. If you have a hard time with that, you could, of course, reflect on human existence that mirrors these kind of sufferings that are similar to the kind of sufferings of the lower realms. But then again, to think of them as an objective place is difficult. Well, simply because there is no objective place. So even our experience of the human realm is totally subjective. Having a human body, we experience a realm that a dog wouldn't experience, that a cat wouldn't experience. In our mind, there is possibly the sense, oh, they see exactly what we see, which is not the case. I mean, simply because of their sense faculties being different, perceiving more in some cases, less in other cases. And that is even more it's even more different when we think of other forms of life. I mean, tiny insects, well, they're also animals, so, but like very tiny insects, flies, and so forth. And then going into other realms, thinking about other realms, well, it makes sense. Their bodies are different, their karmic potencies are different, and so they experience their environment very different. And just as our reality, our way of perceiving the environment, situations, and so forth seems very real to us, our suffering being very real, our happiness being very real to us at least, well, the same is true for other living beings. So to not think of them as like objectively existing, objectively out there, but having subjective, different experiences that are characterized by the Preta realm or the Hull realm, for instance. So in that way, it makes much more sense to think of them as different realms. And even when we think of hellish experiences in the human realm, well, in the hell realms, the suffering is so much greater. So it doesn't really do justice to the kind of suffering that beings experience in these realms. Although we can, of course, reflect on the human suffering that is a hellish experience for our own practice. Anyway, But the next step then, if you want to bring this in, is refuge. Then, of course, really important and greatly misunderstood. Uh, Partly because, well, maybe because of the terminology. Taking refuge, it seems like we're helpless. It seems like we're not able to stand on our own feet and take care of ourselves because we're like, well, I don't know, refugees. Um, but of course, that's not what the word means. In fact, the word kind of also means seeking release or seeking protection. In Tibetan, the word can also be translated in that way. Like when you take refuge, you go for protection. And we go for protection all the time. I mean, we have a roof over our head to protect ourselves from the sun, from the rain, and so forth. We buy food, we cook food to protect ourselves from hunger. We seek out our friends to, I don't know, protect ourselves from loneliness or boredom and so forth. So there's nothing wrong with that. We do seek protection all the time. So taking refuge is just another way of doing exactly that, to protect ourselves from uh, uncomfortable experiences, basically. So no one is saying we cannot continue to make sure we have a roof over our head, get the food we need, seek friendships, etc. That's not what this means, but well, taking refuge in Buddha Dharma Sangha doesn't exclude, or seeking protection in Buddha Dharma Sangha doesn't exclude our seeking protection from other things or seeking protection in other things. It just means that we train ourselves in such a way. So taking refuge repeatedly, we train ourselves in such a way that when we have a problem, we seek the solution in the Dharma, because that's the main object of refuge. So, okay, we're cold, we're hungry, and so forth. Okay, well, first of all, of course, we need to make sure these sufferings are removed. I don't know, seek shelter, get food, etc. But then in the long term, to not experience hunger, thirst, and so forth, to look in the Dharma, look for the Dharma, or check what does the Dharma tell us in terms of how can we avoid future sufferings. And also right now, when we have a mental problem in particular, well, what does the Dharma tell us? What method does it prescribe? Because the Dharma really means basically refers to methods, to means and methods. So the Dharma in a looser kind of sense, but definitely in the sense of taking refuge in the Dharma here. So what are the methods it prescribes? That's it. And the Buddha being teaching, the person teaching the Dharma, the Sangha practicing it and assisting us, as we all know. So in that way, really taking refuge is just saying, well, reminding ourselves every time means every day, of course, making it a habit that when things go wrong, and even if they don't go wrong, well, how should I behave? What should I do? How should I deal with this situation? So that's really what taking refuge means. And doing the prayer, etc., is just to remind us. And of course, reciting the prayer is not taking refuge. It's really just opening ourselves to the methods, the means and methods of the Dharma. Anyway, that's just an introduction to taking refuge, and we'll talk a little bit more about it next time. But yeah, to make an extra effort to take refuge the way I just described. And here, what it says, for instance, is this dread of suffering. I mean, well, suffering, of course, is part of our existence, and it's not about being paranoid about it, but still wanting to avoid it. And that's just natural. So it's natural to want to avoid it and seek means and methods, or look for the means and methods in the Dharma that help us to at least avoid future suffering. And a conviction or confidence in the ability of Buddha Dharma Sangha to guide us in the right way. Okay. So seeking refuge really in the end is the dread of future problems, the conviction that Buddha Dharma and especially the Dharma can help us, and then kind of moving in that direction, seeking those methods, learning about these methods, etc. Anyway, all right. So that's for the Lamrim. And then I've got plenty of questions. All right. Where are the questions? Oh, what did I do? I thought I'd already opened it. I probably didn't. So I haven't prepared any material because I was busy until today. I changed one or two things. Um, but anyway, I've got more time this week, so I'll prepare plenty for next class. And anyway, we won't run out of material. Okay, at least not this week and not next week either. All right, so the first question, and I don't know the exact order. I received these, and I think Jimmy's question I received first, and then I just go according to the order in which I receive it. I received them, so I hope this is the right order. Jimmy asked if it's okay if I would personally lead us through the dissolution process meditation at the end of one class. Absolutely, if everyone is happy with that, to do that. But I thought not today because not everyone is here. So we could do the dissolution meditation together if all of you agree at the very end. Yeah, it's a nice idea, I think. Just go through the stages and think we're actually dying so that we're aware, we're mindful when it actually happens. And in that way, hopefully able to kind of stay in the clear light if we can. I mean, my teachers usually say this, stay in the clear light is not that difficult. Using the clear light to meditate on emptiness, that's a different matter. But even just staying in the clear light and being aware of it is definitely very beneficial. And so, yeah, making it part of our practice. I don't see any problem with doing that. But like I said next time. Okay, and then Shmuel asked a follow-up question with regard to prophecies. Okay, that's difficult. Does it relate to the material being studied? Well, yeah, I mentioned it. I did talk about prophecies. Um, Pretty sure I did. That the Buddha makes prophecies and so forth, like in terms of the didn't I say that? Anyway, somehow I seem to remember it came up. So what is this? These prophecies. It's a good question. It comes up a lot, actually. A lot of people have the same question. So, is the prediction of a valid prophecy definite to happen, as if set in stone? And if the answer is no, then what is the meaning of a valid prophecy? If the answer is yes, well, then, for instance, he gives the example of the prophecy that His Holiness will mention, His Holiness the Dalai Lama will live up to the age of 113. So then there's no need for us to offer long life pujas and create the causes because it's already set in stone. All right. Well, first of all, if the answer is no, what's the meaning of a valid prophecy? And then the answer is yes. Okay. The thing is, first of all, with His Holiness's age, is it a prophecy or not? I mean, we don't know. His Holiness is talking about a dream he had. So he's not saying, I make this following prophecy. He's never said that. And I don't know, unless another person said so and I just haven't heard about it. But it talks more about a dream. Now, the thing is, it could be a prophecy. We don't know. There's a possibility. But a prophecy doesn't mean we don't have to apply the causes and conditions. It's basically saying being able to see. So this is who makes prophecies? Well, beings who have a special mental ability in the sense that their mind sees the possibility of that happening. Well, possibility, I'm using the word possibility. There's two scenarios here. Either they see that all the causes and conditions are there and it's definitely going to happen. So, for instance, as an example, well, let's say all the causes and conditions, His Holiness's disciples, His Holiness's followers have over the years accumulated the causes of conditions for His Holiness to live until the age of 113. But of course, His Holiness is not going to say, stop all the long life pujas, it's all done now, because he wouldn't claim to have clairvoyance. And secondly, people accumulate a lot of merit for the Lama to be around also after His Holiness is passing. So there's no harm in having these pujas and these prayers. So anyway, let's say there's one scenario, all the causes and conditions have already been fulfilled, but now it's just a matter of waiting until His Holiness really lives up to that age. But on the other hand, it could also be that the causes and conditions are not complete yet, but there's a great possibility that they will become complete if we continue the way we do. If we continue the way we do, then the karma the collective karma we've accumulated is there in the sense of, well, not complete because we still need to accumulate enough merit for it to actually ripen. Okay. So in that sense, that would be the second scenario where, as I said, we haven't accumulated the causes and conditions yet, but if we do, then it's going to happen. And so with the bodhisattvas, for instance, when a Buddha makes a prophecy, when a Buddha predicts this bodhisattva will become enlightened at this time, for instance, it's not saying, oh, they could just lay back. If it's a bodhisattva, let's say on the 8th ground, no longer have to do anything, they'll become enlightened anyway. No, the Buddha knows no way they're going to become lazy. Their bodhicitta, their wisdom, all their other qualities are so strong that they're going to continue practicing. So they just know as a certain, for certain, they know for sure that they won't stop practicing, and therefore that's going to be the result at a certain point in time, and that's the name they're going to have, and so forth. So these are the prophecies that are usually given in the context of, well, like a Buddha making a prophecy when it comes to bodhisattvas, when they make prophecies about when these bodhisattvas will become enlightened. And again, in this case, the causes and conditions are not complete yet because they're not enlightened yet. So it's not about having all the causes and conditions together because then they would become enlightened the next moment. But that's, of course, not the case. This is different to the age thing. So for the aged, you're not 113 the next moment. It doesn't work that way. So even if all the causes and conditions are complete for His Holiness to live up to the age of 113, we still have to wait for that to actually happen. But in the case of enlightenment, of all the causes and conditions for attaining, for obtaining or accomplishing the mind of enlightenment are there, then you accomplish it, you'll have it. You have it a moment later. But as I said, a prophecy basically knows, or if you make a prophecy, the mind of the person who makes the prophecy, if it's a correct prophecy, knows that this person, if they accumulate the causes and conditions, and they will, knowing that they will attain enlightenment, or they will do such and such, or will attain such and such state at this point in time. All right, I hope that's a little clearer now. Okay, that was Shmuel's question. So I don't know whether Shmuel is here. If he wants to.
Yes, it made it clear. Thank you.
Great. Okay, and then we've got Edward's question. All right. His question is on selflessness of the I being presented before the selflessness of phenomena. If it's not easier, in fact, it feels more difficult to me, but isn't it the key to realize selflessness? Isn't it the key to realize selflessness of other phenomena? So in other words, isn't realizing the selflessness of person the key to realizing the selflessness of other phenomena? Well, first of all, I hope I didn't say anything that was misleading, because in fact, actually, there is no certainty as to whether you realize the selfnesses of phenomena first or the selfnesses of person first. The texts are quite clear on that. I mean, some texts talk about focusing more on the selfnesses of person, realizing that first, and then others talk about realizing the selflessness of phenomena first. But a lot of scholars, reliable scholars, are saying for some it's you realize this, and for others you realize that. And I think also the degree of difficulty, it just depends on the person. If you're more familiar with one over the other, well, one over the one, one of these two will be easier to understand, will be easier to realize, or maybe it's equally difficult, but you choose one over the other. So in actuality, you can choose this or you can choose that. It's just it's sometimes recommended to focus on the selfnesses of person first, because our selfness, on the selfness of person first, because our holding on to the inherent existence of the self gives directly rise to our self-centeredness. It gives directly rise to our self-cherishing, which of course gives then rise to the other afflictions. Since we're so obsessed with the I, it kind of makes sense to focus on that first, because my attachment to the table is not as dangerous, or my attachment to my body is not as dangerous as my attachment to the I. And that's why some texts may recommend focusing more on the selfnesses of the I. But I don't think the reason he gives is this is because realizing selfness as a phenomena relies on a consciousness or mind of selflessness, which is acting through the I. Thus, in order to realize selfnesses of anything, selfnesses of I has to be achieved first. I mean, I really appreciate that train of thought, but I don't think that has anything to do with that. I mean, first of all, yeah, the consciousness that realizes selflessness is a phenomenon. It's acting through the I. What does that even mean? It's acting through the I. I mean, on the basis of the consciousness meditating on selflessness, we label the I meditates on selflessness. So there's no like acting I kind of pulling the strings in the back. The I is merely labeled on any of the five aggregates. So when the mind meditates on selflessness, the I meditates on selflessness. So I don't think that would be a reason. And anyway, I already said that when it comes to the two types of selflessness, it depends on the person, what we find more difficult or what we find easier. And there is no rule, no hard and fast rule as to what we need to realize first. Okay. Then question number 2 about achieving good rebirth. Edward, I hope I say it right, Edward. He's saying, this has been troubling me for a while. I understand why human rebirth is the best for practicing Dharma based on our surroundings. Okay. However, I find it strange to reduce a good rebirth to the human realm alone, or human realm only. Practitioners accept the concept, the idea of other realms. Animals are obvious, but hungry ghosts, semi-gods, etc., if looked upon not metaphorically, they demand belief. Okay, so they actually really exist. That's the Buddhist idea as separate realms. I think that's what he's saying. I find it strange not to include other potential intelligent life forms in the universe that would provide even better rebirth than humans in terms of their closeness to the Dharma, as we call it. If life exists somewhere else in this almost boundless universe, it could include such advanced beings. I would prefer to be reborn as such a being. What are these beings? I mean, actually, from a Buddhist point of view, the Buddha was very clear on this, that our world system, the world as we know it now, our solar system, our this whole existence with all our planets, well, similar world systems exist all over the universe. And again, you have humans in these realms. Humans are not restricted to living on planet Earth. There's so many different types of humans all over the universe. So the Buddha has very clearly talked about these world systems that are similar to ours. Maybe they look very different. Maybe the size of their noses are different. Maybe they look, nothing like humans. But mainly the main characteristics of human beings, they are given in these different world systems. And that's why we call them human. So it comes with a certain amount of intelligence, a certain amount of openness, ability to understand the Dharma, and a certain amount of suffering that is helpful, but not too much suffering. And if a living being has all these characteristics, and there's surely more than these, we call them human. if they have incredible suffering, if it's just part of their rebirth to experience incredible sufferings that are typical to the animal realm, we call them animals. If they're typical to the hungry ghost, we call them that. So it's just on the basis of the amount of suffering they have, the intelligence they have, the amount of happiness they have, and so forth. Or if they have incredible happiness, so much happiness, everything is basically effortless in their life. Well, not totally effortless, but it requires very little effort. And so they're just developed this tendency, not in all cases, but they've developed this tendency of just enjoying this. Well, we call them celestial beings. And again, it's very important to understand that this is only in general saying that the human realm is the best realm, because definitely the celestial realm is mentioned as well as one of the higher realms to which is a higher rebirth as part of the higher rebirth. So therefore, there are definitely a lot of celestial beings who practice the Dharma, who are very good candidates for uh, practicing, for learning the Dharma and so forth. But I guess in general, it's more human beings who are, yeah, more human beings have all the conducive conditions. And there are humans, endless humans all over the whole universe. Yeah, so it's not just humans in this in this world. Okay, I hope I answered this question. I don't even know. Is Edward here with us?
Sorry, Edward is in Japan,
Okay,
so
so
he will see it later.
you can see it later, and then again, maybe if he has a follow question, he can ask again. And there's Shmuel again. Okay, so question about emptiness. For example, practitioners are usually encouraged to study and reflect on subtle impermanence before moving on to the more advanced teachings on emptiness. This is because subtle impermanence is generally easier to realize, and understanding it helps pave the way for the realization of emptiness. Yes. Is this specific course suited to a person who does not have a good background with the understanding of subtle impermanence? Yeah. I mean, why not? This is suited for pretty much anyone. The topic is um, it's so far-reaching. There's so many different topics here, and the point, of course, is to address all of these and learn about them, including impermanence. So I think there are different levels of the understanding of impermanence, of course. I mean, I think we have all some understanding of subtle impermanence. If we just take the constant movements of the subtle particles, atoms, and so forth that are part of our environment. If you think about that, it's not that hard to understand. So I'm pretty sure we all have some understanding, and there are different degrees, of course. But yeah, definitely the Precious Garland is suited for such a person. If, on the other hand, the concept of emptiness is introduced to us when we're not ready, that is, when our mind is strongly controlled by afflictions such as wrong views, greed, hatred, etc., and their resulting negative actions, we won't be able to comprehend the meaning of the ultimate nature of reality. We might, for instance, equate emptiness with total non-existence, causing us to dismiss the law of cause and effect. Well, that is true. So I guess we all have to decide for ourselves. Am I totally controlled by my afflictions? But I don't think if you were that much controlled by your afflictions, I don't even think you would have the interest in a class like that. You probably have very different interests. So I don't think we need to worry so much about it. But of course, we all take something else from these classes, and the classes in themselves, they're the least important part of this. It's what we do with them, how we integrate what we learn into our daily life and actually apply it. Take the time to think about, to meditate on subtle impermanence. And I mean, I'm saying it's not that difficult. Of course, it's not easy. It requires a good understanding of cause and effect as well, on a subtler level, like understanding, for instance, that a sprout is constantly changing, um, being an effect of so many causes and conditions, so many factors that came together to create this particular sprout, to create this, I don't know, this plant, for instance. If you think the quality of the water, the weather on every day, if you just think of wine when they grow like grapes to produce wine. The weather during the season every day basically determines the taste of, well, the grapes and therefore later on of the wine. So on the subtle level, so many causes and conditions um, play an incredible role, and there's a whole process of these causes and conditions affecting the result. And that being the case, then affecting and constantly changing, therefore the result is just like that. It's changing, affecting other things around it, and then eventually going out of existence. If we really think about it in the context also of causes and conditions, we get a much greater sense of the interconnectedness of everything and the constant change. And very helpful, of course, for an understanding of emptiness. And yeah, I believe if we spend some time every day a little bit, or not every day, but if we make it part of our meditation, the understanding of impermanence, or the meditation of impermanence, if we make it part of our practice, we will eventually gain a realization of it. And even before we do, our understanding deepens, and it has an effect, of course, on our life and on our understanding of emptiness. Okay, I hope this answered the question. And then question number 2, Shmuel, if it didn't, please go ahead. Shmuel, do you want to say something?
No, I need to think of it.
Okay. Is this specific course on the Precious Garland suited for a person who does not have a good understanding and grasp of the law of cause and effect? Yeah, I mean, that's why we learn about it. If you had a great grasp on the law of cause and effect, if the disciples that Nāgārjuna specifically directed this text towards, if it was really for those who had a really good grasp, he wouldn't have talked about cause and effect. I mean, the verses we already gone through, it's very much, even though the words may not directly talk about it, but they indicate cause and effect. So it's taught extensively, which is why, yeah, if you don't have a good understanding, you're a good candidate, basically. Right. Okay. Then Orit, she has a question about the term klesha. Is Orit there? I can't see her right now. Is Orit here today?
Orit.
I'm here.
You're here. Okay. Oh, sorry. I haven't seen you yet. Orit, you're there. Okay, great. Oh, there you are. Okay, now I see you. Does the term klesha, what does klesha mean? How would you translate it into English?
There was one of the, I wasn't sure if we only refer like to anger and things like that, or also to cognitive obscuration, like something that disturbed the mind.
Okay. Actually, the word klesha is usually used to refer to the mental afflictions. Mental afflictions. So any mental affliction. Okay, so here there's a bit of a discussion of what are we going to call klesha actually in English. Some people say they should be called disturbing emotions. I'm not happy with the word disturbing emotions because not every mental affliction is an emotion. For instance, ignorance, I wouldn't call that an emotion, but it's definitely a klesha. Some people use the word delusions. Yeah, delusions, that was in the past, that was a term that was used more frequently. So delusions works maybe. So in other words, what do they refer to? So if it were to explain what is a klesha, what is a mental affliction, what is a delusion, or if you want to say disturbing emotion, well, whichever term you use, these are mental factors in the sense that they have very specific functions, not just the function of perceiving their object, which is a general function of the mind, but very specific functions. And these specific functions, I mentioned it in the very beginning at some point when I explained afflictions. So first of all, they disturb the mind. But they don't just disturb the mind, they also are responsible directly for accumulating contaminated karma. It doesn't have to be negative karma. It can also be it can also be a neutral karma. It's not virtuous. It's not that they directly give rise to virtue. Indirectly they may, but not directly. But they directly give rise to, yeah, as I said, either negative or what's it called? Neutral karma, definitely contaminated karma. And they disturb the mind. They exaggerate the way they perceive things. They always exaggerate. Their objects are always perceived in an exaggerated way. In the case of aversion, an exaggerated sense of the negative qualities of the object of anger or aversion, or in the case of, let's say, arrogance, seeing myself as so much better than everyone else. That would be arrogance. Kind of exaggerating the good qualities of myself. In the case of greed, exaggerating the qualities of the object we crave for, we have greed for. So in that sense, yeah, it's always this exaggeration and wrong perception. Those are all called afflictions. And then there's so many different types. But usually the anger, attachment, greed, arrogance, they're the most common ones. Now, as to the afflictive obscurations, so klesha can be translated as mental affliction. Now, are mental afflictions and afflictive obscurations the same? Is there a difference, or are they the same? So when I ask, are they the same, are they different, I'm asking, is this something that is both a klesha, or a mental affliction, and an afflictive obscuration? Is whatever a mental obscuration necessarily an afflictive obscuration? And is whatever is a mental an afflictive obscuration necessarily also a klesha? What do you think? What do you think, Orit?
Bit complicated because you said also the attachment and anger, so they can go both way, but with the ignorance, I'm not so sure.
But first of all, when you say they go both ways, what do you mean with they go both ways? Which ways?
You can say that they are both klesha and afflictive obscuration.
No. Klesha is just
and
all right. I think I didn't see this
but
clearly.
sorry, mental affliction, you said, and afflictive obscuration, right?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
klesha and mental affliction are the same. Klesha is just this. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So therefore, what is the difference? Is whatever is a mental affliction necessarily an afflictive obscuration? What do you think? Is whatever is a mental affliction necessarily an afflictive obscuration?
But this I'm not sure because of
Okay.
what you said about ignorance and about karma.
But karma is not an affliction. Karma is not an affliction. Karma is an action of body, speech, and mind that was produced. Let's talk about contaminated karma in particular. So here we're talking about contaminated karma. One of its causes was definitely one of the afflictions, right? So
Okay.
what are afflictive obscurations? Karma is not an afflictive obscuration. Afflictive obscurations, it is the truth of the origin. So for truth, the truth of origin consists of the afflictions and, afflictive obscurations and karma. Or am I getting confused? No, no, I'm not getting confused. Afflictive obscurations are usually twofold, but they don't include karma.
Okay. So this is like, now I'm putting in another terms, which like the 5 poisons. We can
Yes.
put them here with the afflictive
Yes.
obscuration. Okay.
They're mental afflictions. So the 5 poisons, the 3 poisons, the 5, the 6 root delusions, and so forth, all the different mental afflictions They are afflictive obscurations. But are they afflictive obscurations that are not the mental afflictions? That are not any of the mental afflictions?
You mean like fear and shame and things like
No,
that, or
they're
no?
not afflictive obscurations.
Okay.
There is one more thing. There's one other afflictive obscuration that is not a mental affliction. Does anyone else know what that could be? What is and yes, go ahead.
Maybe, oh no, no, it does not work.
It doesn't work. Okay. All right. Go ahead. Anyone else? Leora? What is an afflictive obscuration but not a mental affliction?
As you mentioned, ignorance.
Verse.
Ignorance is not a mental affliction?
It's birth afflicted obscuration.
Is ignorance so just a sec, Vada,
Yeah.
Leora. So ignorance is a mental affliction, but it's not an afflictive obscurations, or is an afflictive obscuration, but not a mental affliction?
Obscuration. It's definitely obscuration. Is it
It's
mental?
definitely an
It could be mental. But also it can be both. The realization of direct knowing reality is of course mental, but understanding emptiness is not a mental obscuration, or understanding is not. No, it's not mental obscuration.
Wait. No, understanding, of course, isn't. Here we're just talking about the afflictions, right? Call them mental afflictions or just afflictions. So we're not talking about wisdom or the understanding of emptiness. We're talking
Inferential cognition is not mental, and not having inferential cognition is obscuration, but it's not mental, is it?
wait, not so inferential cognition is something. I mean, inferential cognition. Are you talking about inferential cognition of what?
Of emptiness.
So you're saying the absence of the mental, the inferential cognition of emptiness, that is not an
Obscuration, but
affliction.
not mental.
It's not mental? Oh, okay. But why is it an obscuration? I mean, even the vase lacks. Does a vase have obscurations to enlightenment? Because a vase lacks an inferential cognition of emptiness. If the absence of an understanding of emptiness were an obscuration to liberation or even enlightenment, then a vase would have obscurations because it lacks the cognitive, the inferential cognition of emptiness. Shmuel, you want to say something? You raised your hand. Go ahead.
Yes, I think that no, karmic imprints of non-virtuous actions are are afflictive obscurations, but not mental afflictions.
Karmic imprints. Okay. Well, that's problematic because positive karmic imprints of, for instance, love and compassion, do they prevent liberation or do they assist liberation? Do they prevent the attainment of liberation or do they prevent the attainment of liberation? Do they obscure it?
I think I specified karmic imprints of negative karmic actions, but because of the connection, it got lost, I think.
Okay. All right. You said negative karmic imprints. Okay.
Yes.
All right. Well, they're usually not considered to be part of afflictive obscurations. although it is true that they prevent liberation, but usually they're said to be, and it's actually in the beginning of this text, I actually explained what afflictive obscurations are. They're twofold. You have the mental afflictions. The mental afflictions are the three poisons, the six main of the root delusions, the secondary delusions or afflictions, whatever you want to call them. They are the afflictions. They are the mental afflictions. I don't know what else to say to define them in such a way that it's clear that they're all mental factors, such as love, such as attachment, ignorance, and so forth. So these mental factors that have a particular function which is, to summarize it, the function is to prevent us from being liberated, causing the creation of contaminated karma and therefore keeping us trapped in samsara. Those are the specific mental factors. Those are mental afflictions. But then there are other afflictive obscurations that are not that are not described as afflictions. And what could these be? They're not karma. They're not negative karma. And I described them previously in the text. What are they? Afflictive obscurations that are not afflictions. What are they? Venerable Tekcho, any idea?
Sorry, I got distracted. I wasn't listening.
Okay, never mind. Anyone else? Oh, Shmuel, you raised your hand. Afflictive obscurations.
Oh,
Did you raise your hand to answer?
maybe the contaminated aggregates?
No,
No, sorry.
that's okay. It's okay. Anyone else? Anyone else? What are afflictive obscurations that are not afflictions, that are not kleshas? I'm just going to say klesha because it's easier to say. Klesha is just a Sanskrit word. So kleshas are afflictive obscurations, definitely. But there is another category of afflictive obscurations that are not kleshas. So they're not negative karma or negative karmic imprints. They're not the five aggregates. So what's left? Think of gardening. Orit?
You mean the seeds?
Yes, the seeds. Who said imprint? Imprints, like, yeah, in the way you could also describe them as imprints. I mean, when I say gardening, I was thinking of seeds, but yeah. Actually, the imprints, of course, the potential of the afflictions when, for instance, right now, don't have any anger, but the potential for anger to arise again is there. And that is just the same way an afflictive obscuration as the actual anger is too. It's of course less harmful when it lies dormant. I'm glad this came up. So the kleshas are all these mental factors that give rise to contaminated karma, that disturb our mind, that exaggerate, that are just as part of our mind right now, are the harmful kind of minds. Just the harmful minds. They're really harmful. They keep us trapped. And there's so many of them, different types of anger, etc. But then there's also the potential. There's also the potential of these emotions to pop up when they're not there. And this is emphasized a lot because we may feel safe if we haven't been angry for a month or two, but we're not safe, right? Okay, because of these, well, seeds, it's just for lack of a better word, there's still something there that makes them pop up. And those are called seeds. So I'm glad it came up. So hopefully this is, yes, please.
So we stay with the klesha till Buddhahood.
Say again. Sorry, I couldn't hear that.
So we get rid of the kleshas only after we get enlightened. It's not like or also the harat also get rid of all these kleshas.
All right. To get rid of kleshas, what is the same as getting rid of kleshas? What state do you have to reach? Is it just enlightenment? Is it only when you reach enlightenment that you overcome the kleshas? Or is there a way that you can eliminate the kleshas before you become enlightened? Is there anyone else who wants
my question.
That's your question. Okay, you don't need to answer it. Is anyone else who wants to answer it? Can you only overcome the kleshas once you become enlightened? Or do you eliminate them before? Kleshas, to remind you, are the afflictions. To answer this, you just need to go back to the text. It's actually all in the text. I wrote about this quite extensively. Shmuel, go ahead.
To eliminate the clashes, one needs to become liberated, like reach.
Okay, to overcome the kleshas, you need to become liberated. If you're liberated, do you overcome the kleshas?
Yes.
Yeah, that's what liberation means. What does liberation mean? Liberation doesn't mean being liberated, I don't know, from some external factor, from some external problem. No, being liberated means to eliminate the afflictions. Eliminate, that's the main thing. And what is the main affliction? The root ignorance. So it's really, liberation means to eliminate the root ignorance. And if you eliminate the root ignorance, you eliminate anger, attachment, pride, greed, all the other afflictions, all the other kleshas automatically. And if you don't have the other kleshas, you don't accumulate karma. You don't accumulate contaminated karma. You still are left with this body, but then when you pass away, well, this samsaric body, that's also gone. And the moment the ignorance is gone, the root ignorance is eliminated, well, your mind is liberated because that main cause of all our trouble is gone. The imprints, you're still left with the imprints. Remember I talked about the garlic and the vessel and so forth. I don't know, maybe the way I describe it is not clear enough. I mean, all this study material I give you, I mean, it's not your fault because none of you could answer it. And I thought it was so clear, and I probably didn't write it in a way that is clear enough. I don't know. So
maybe I just got confused with all the afflictive mental affliction, afflictive obscuration, afflictive cognitive. It's like the same word in different contexts. And
I understand. I totally understand. But I'm saying,
but I get it. I get now what you're saying. So
yeah, but what I'm saying is you're not the only one. So there's something wrong with the way I wrote it. Maybe I just made it too complicated. I'm thinking maybe I wrote too much. Sometimes too much can be just so confusing. In my mind, it's clear when I write it down, but it doesn't mean that what I write down makes it clear in your mind. So, let me think about this. Because I'm a little concerned since no one could answer it. I thought it was clear, and I don't blame you. I blame myself. I'm thinking I didn't make it clear enough. And maybe you're just overwhelmed with the amount of material. So this is just something to consider. And again, like any kind of input from your side, of course, will be helpful. Yeah, so maybe I have to adjust the way maybe I make just simple notes. It may be easier to just make a few notes and then there are not too many words. Please think about it. I mean, if you go
I'll
back,
reread it because it was like, I don't know, a month ago or something like that. So I'll read it
I'll
again.
show you.
No,
Show you. Oh, okay,
I'll read it again and then I'll see if now it's more
clear.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes, please do. If you have the time, please go back and then let me know. I mean, I may have just put it in a too complicated way, and it's good to learn from that and make the necessary adjustments. Yeah, so I'll show you in a second where it is. And then Shmuel, you just raised your hand? Yes, go ahead.
Yes, I wanted to ask, You said that the afflictive obscurations include, beside the mental afflictions, the potentials of the mental afflictions.
Yeah.
But you didn't. But when I said they include the negative karmic imprints, you said that is not true. So what's the difference between the negative karmic imprints and the potential or seeds of the mental afflictions?
Okay. First of all, do you think there's a difference between karma and the kleshas and the afflictions? Is there a difference?
Yes.
Okay, very good. So there's a difference. What is the difference?
Karma is the, strictly speaking, karma is the effect of clashes.
Okay, very good. So for instance, karma of the body, karma of the speech, that's pretty straightforward because karma of the body and speech are the actual...
I'm sorry, I had to go to the bomb shelter. So if you need something, you are a co-host.
Okay, great.
You can do it.
All right, I have to do it. I'll do it. Great. Thank you. Be safe. Okay. Oh gosh. All right. So, what was I saying? All right. So about pleasure. So how does it work? I mean, the thing is, most important is to check your own mind. It all goes back to this. All right, it's a little difficult to identify the root ignorance, first of all, of course. But then we all know when there's anger, when there's attachment, and so forth. So our anger, our attachment, they give rise to actions of the body and of the speech. All right, that's pretty clear. The actions of the speech, using harsh words, for instance, in the case of anger, well, they're not the anger, right, Shmuel? That's clear. And in terms of like maybe hitting someone, the physical action, again. Okay, that's also different. Now, what about mental karma that rises from the klesha? What do you think is mental karma? Shmuel, what do you think is mental karma? Mental action.
I'm not really sure. I can say what I vaguely think. I'm not sure how useful it would be.
But you did say karma is that which rises
Right,
from the afflictions, right? Okay.
right.
So just
So then
simply,
yeah.
so think
Yes,
of an example. Think when you're angry or when there's strong attachment or any of how could that give rise to mental action? What would this mental action be?
I mean, maybe so maybe maybe in the case of mental karma it's the same. Mental karma is just the same as mental afflictions. Well, maybe.
Maybe. Okay, I understand. Well, first of all, in a course, in a rough way, if we just talk about it in a more general way, in a gross way, first you have an affliction, you're angry, and then you start thinking, oh, I could do this to this person. You know, all these thoughts that arise. It's not like you're just angry and then you're done with it, right? You make plans on what you could do to this person who you're angry with. Like you start thinking about them, I would need to avoid them or I need to harm them, etc. So all this mental kind of stuff that arises, all these thoughts that arise, negative thoughts that arise from anger, well, these are karmic actions. In a general sense, you could say they're karmic actions, right? I mean, it's an action that is mental. But to be more precise, we talk about the mental factor of intention. Every time there's a mind, there is an intention. So really, strictly speaking, that is what we call mental karma. It's that intention. Intention is just a function of the mind to move the mind to a particular object, going here or there. So in the case of anger, if anger is present in my mind, then my mind keeps focusing on, so my intention focuses the mind on how I could harm this person, how I could, I don't know, do something to this person, avoid this person, whatever, whatever it gives rise to. But if at the moment of anger, there's also an intention. So karma is already accumulated. But there are different functions of the mind. There are different mental factors. Mental factor is just saying, it's a different way of saying it's a function of the mind, and we have different functions. So one function of the mind is just to be resentful, to be angry. That's what we call anger. One function of the mind is to move the mind towards a particular object. For instance, the object of the anger. And since these are different functions of the mind, they leave behind different seeds. They have a different potential that even when they're not active, the potential for them to arise again is there, but it's a different potential. There's the potential to become angry, and there's the potential to move the mind in a certain direction, right? Therefore, we say the seeds are different. The seeds of the karmic action and the seeds of the afflictions are left by their respective function. So the seed of the intention, the movement aspect of the mind, moving the mind towards an object, the seeds that it leaves behind are different from the seeds that are left behind by the anger, which is why they're different seeds. You see, does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So when the anger is no longer active, it leaves behind a potential for it to arise again. When this particular intention now that wants to harm this person, etc., that like moves the mind towards planning to harm this person, etc., when that is no longer active, it leaves behind a different seed, which is why they're not both the same seeds. They're different seeds. And since karma is not an afflictive obscuration, then the seed it leaves behind is also not one. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Anyway. It's a little complicated. It's not easy, but this is important. This is the basis. This is the basis of everything. Understanding the obscurations. What is it that causes us trouble? And whether you call them afflictive obscurations or not, of course, they're equally a problem, equally giving rise to suffering. It's just to determine the terminology. All right. And then Orit had another question. I hope it's a little clearer now. Orit had another question. The fourth, oh my God, how did time go today? Never mind. Okay, today time went really quickly. Well, the fourth line in the second verse of this text. All right, let's leave the question. Let's leave the question for now. There's only two more left, and I'll answer them, of course. But I'll just quickly go to the text. I want to show you, first of all, what I meant when I talked about the explanation on the afflictions. Okay, let me look for it. I think it's around page 20, but I'm not sure. All right. Oh, here you go. So mental afflictions. All right, so the Buddha's illuminations here on page 12. Is everyone still here, or did everyone have to go to the shelter? I'm not sure. People still there.
Some of us are here. Yeah, some of us. Except for
In the end, I'm just talking to myself.
No.
Okay.
Only
Still
Dalit.
some people there. Okay.
Only Dalit, yeah.
Okay, only Dalit went. Okay. All right. Anyway, so okay, let's go. So page, what was it? Page, yeah, afflictive obstructions, page 13. If you start on this page, hopefully it become clear when you read it again. All right, so this is quite important. Actually, I wanted to also quickly summarize what we've gone through so far, so I might as well do this. Today is anyway a day not many people are here, and then maybe people have the time to listen to the recordings. But just to remind you, so we can next time just continue from where we got to last time. All right, so quickly, first of all, of course, we went through the first line basically of the text, which was the homage. Just to remember, we basically took a moment to honor the translators and recognize their incredible work. And this is the only time we actually hear from the translators when they pay homage themselves before the actual text starts. And then the homage of the text, of course, starts. Nāgārjuna paying homage, explaining also the qualities of the Buddha, having overcome, well, afflictive obstructions, having overcome cognitive obstructions. So in that way, describing to us the Buddha, but also allowing for us to generate or enabling us to generate the appreciation, devotion to the Buddha, which in turn is it's a very helpful, psychologically just a very helpful state of mind that enables us to gain a deeper understanding of the Dharma. Okay, so that's the first verse. We learned a lot about the Buddha to a certain degree. I mean, perfect realizations, perfect eliminations, etc. All right, so all this we've gone through. And of course, the Buddha's enlightened activities for the benefit of others. Having therefore gone through the verse of honor, or the verse of homage, which is, well, basically serves this purpose of moving something in us, the way I just said, and gaining a better understanding of who the Buddha is. Then the next verse is Nāgārjuna's promise to compose the text. But it's not just making this promise, not just promising to complete the composition of this text, and there's so much else that we spoke about, but there are also these four aspects, or the words of purpose and relationship. So we also learn, as part of this particular verse, that there's a subject matter, there's an immediate purpose of learning about it, there's an ultimate purpose, and there's, of course, the relationship between these three, how they build on top of each other. So in order to reach the ultimate purpose, which is the main goal, high rebirth and liberation, enlightenment, that needs to be preceded by an understanding of this text, the understanding of the subject matter, and of course, for that you need the subject matter. So the subject matter being mainly the topic of high rebirth, as well as the highest good. So those two, high rebirth and the highest good. But it's not just those two results that are the results of Buddhist practice, but it's of course also the causes. And that is really the Dharma. The Dharma consists mainly of these causes, all the different methods. Everything that is described in the Dharma is directly or indirectly one of those causes for higher rebirth or causes for the highest good. All right. Anyway, so they're described in these words of the subject matter. So the subject matter, the immediate purpose, and so forth. They're also part of the promise to compose the text. Okay. And the Dharma, all right, that was Orit's question. I'm sorry for scrolling up and down. That was one of the homeworks. Oh, no, never mind. We can do it next time. I'll ask again next time. So in the third and fourth line, what does the Dharma refer to? Now there's not enough time, so let's just drop that or move on to the next verse. So the next verse then, it starts, this is the actual text. Oh, sorry, what is this? The reason why Nāgārjuna teaches the verse, what is this? Oh, this is still part of the second verse. It also indicates the reason why. Oh yeah, not only does it give the promise, but it also gives the reason why why Nāgārjuna taught this verse in particular to the king. And so the reason given here is that he's a valid or qualified vessel for the Dharma. We heard about the different qualities that you need to have to be such a vessel. No need to go through them now, but it's being unprejudiced and so forth. All right. And then the actual text starts. So that's most important now. We came to the actual text, so the overview of the causes and results with regard to higher rebirth and the highest good. Now, what is described in number 3 is basically the sequence. What is the sequence of presenting the higher rebirth, and the highest good? All right, so we talked a lot about the sequence, the importance of the order. And in general, it's helpful to know that there is the order of arising. Just in general, how does something arise? That's one aspect. What is the order of, for instance, well, ignorance, then karma? How do the different afflictions arise? That's important to understand. But there's also the sequence of how should things. Someone has their microphone on. If you could maybe check whether your mic is on.
Shmuel, you got your microphone on.
Oh yeah, Shmuel, could you mute yourself? Yeah, okay, great. No, Shmuel's is off. Okay, anyway, great, thank you. So what I was going to say. Oh, right. So you have the order of arising, just their natural order, or the natural order when it comes to how to practice something. So we've gone through this. Then you have the order of cognition. These are two different kinds of orders, and they determine how or what is the sequence of some of the concepts being introduced. We went through this. This is pretty straightforward. But then now the sequence of arising of higher rebirth and the highest good. Now, this is quite important. How are they presented? Well, of course, we know that rebirth in the higher realms, that is explained first, and then comes the explanation of liberation and enlightenment for two reasons. One is that the higher rebirth are a foundation. Unless we have higher rebirth, unless we're in the future reborn in the human or the celestial realm, well, we won't be able to attain liberation and Buddhahood. That makes sense. But also the practices that are responsible for higher rebirth. What are they? Practice of virtue, the practice of moral conduct, of ethical discipline. Well, these are the foundation for the causes for liberation and enlightenment. So it's not just the result that is the foundation of liberation and enlightenment, but also the causes that train our mind, the essential stepping stones, if you like, to gaining a deeper understanding of, to gaining an understanding of reality, which is, of course, part of the practices that lead to liberation and enlightenment. So, here, this is the explanation given in terms of, we need to reduce the afflictions first. We need to accumulate positive actions, positive karmic actions, in order then to, of course, also generate more love and compassion, which all pave the way to fully understanding reality, because they go hand in hand. Love and compassion, virtuous actions, they support wisdom, and wisdom supports them. So from that point of view, it makes sense in terms of our practice, what comes first. So that's what's explained in here. Okay, and then the next part we got to, and I think we got to this part of the sequence of, this is as far as I read, I think. So the sequence of cognition of higher rebirth and the highest good. So this is not about attaining high rebirth and the highest good, where of course higher rebirth needs to be explained first. No, but understanding what they are. First of all, it's important to note that it's not necessary to realize the existence of higher rebirth and to realize liberation and enlightenment in order to attain them. It may seem that way. I mean, it's definitely helpful. It's definitely helpful to understand them, to realize them, but it's not easy. And therefore, even if you don't realize them, especially in the beginning of your practice, you can still practice. You can still progress in your practice. But if you were to cognize them, this is important to understand. This is an important philosophical point. So although it's not a prerequisite, just having faith in their existence is sufficient. It's helpful, and what we need to understand it is that when it comes to comprehending high rebirth and the highest good through reliable cognitive processes, the order of the two is reversed. So this may be quite weird, quite surprising, that understanding higher rebirth, the existence of higher rebirth, is more challenging, is more difficult than understanding that there's liberation and enlightenment. And where does that difficulty come from? Well, to understand that there's liberation, that there's enlightenment, that requires understanding the law of karma and its effects. So without realizing the law of karma and its effects, because just understanding that someone is a human being doesn't mean we understand that they are higher rebirth. We need to understand the causes that give rise to that, which also accounts for the fact that they are higher rebirth because of their positive causes. And that's therefore it involves the realization of karma, which is difficult, more difficult than understanding that there's liberation and enlightenment, which only requires, well, not only, but one of the main concepts to understand in order to understand, to realize that there is, to incontrovertibly know that there's liberation and enlightenment, is the understanding of emptiness. Okay. Did we do this last time? I don't really remember. Does anyone remember how far we got? No? Okay. Oh, delete, you're back.
We did not do it. I think we did not do it the last time.
Okay. All right. Okay, yeah. I so don't remember. I'm laughing because I should really remember, but I don't remember. All right. Okay. So again, this is a really important philosophical concept that is discussed a lot. What does it mean to understand high rebirth, first of all? What does it mean to understand liberation and enlightenment? The first is not that as important. Even more important is understanding that liberation is possible, understanding that enlightenment is possible. Liberation and enlightenment, both are possible. Again, in the beginning, you don't need to know it, but it's really helpful. Okay. So first of all, as I already discussed, did I not talk about evident and slightly obscure phenomena? Didn't I not mention that? No. Okay, great. Okay, so we didn't really get, this is not part of the overview. All right. So to say it again, now I might as well time is almost up, but today we won't do a meditation. We'll do it again next time. I spent too much time with the questions. Oh, Shmuel, you raised your hand?
Yes, but you just said that you spent too much time with the questions, and now I have a question.
That's okay. It's already done. No problem.
Okay, so I wanted to ask, you said that realizing higher rebirths comes after realizing liberation.
Yes.
What about understanding higher rebirths on a gross level versus understanding liberation on a gross level? Which comes first?
On the gross level, what do you think? Oh, it's a good question. What do you mean with on a gross level? What's the difference between understanding it on a gross level versus on a subtle level? What's the difference between the two?
Well, understanding something on a gross level is not incontrovertible realization. It does not have a perfect reason as its basis. It can be correctly assuming this to be true.
Oh, like a correct assumption. So not realizing it, but just correctly assuming it. Okay. Well, that's the question. Is it more difficult to have a correct assumption of karma versus a correct assumption of emptiness? Why should it be easier to have a correct assumption of karma versus a correct assumption of emptiness, but when it comes to realization, it's the other way around? Right? The main argument here is, why is it easier to realize liberation and enlightenment? Well, the main thing you have to know is emptiness in order to realize, to really understand, incontrovertibly know liberation and enlightenment, you need to understand emptiness. That is still easier than what you have to know to really understand high rebirth, which is karma. Karma is so complex and so difficult, and therefore it's harder to realize this. But it's also harder to be convinced of it, don't you think? I mean,
If
it's
that
the
is
go ahead.
if that is the case, then it makes it then it contradicts the notion that one first needs to practice the law of karma as a foundation for practicing, for getting the understanding of emptiness. Because
Why?
if one first needs to understand emptiness before understanding karma, then one can immediately go and practice the realization of emptiness without first understanding karma, without
But do
first
you
practicing karma.
I understand. But are you saying you have to be you have to have a correct assumption, or you have to realize karma before you can practice it?
You have to have a correct assumption of karma before you practice
If
it.
you just
Otherwise,
believe, I mean, correct assumption means like you're totally convinced, 100%. Do you have to be totally convinced, or can you just believe it's true? You know, be not 100% convinced. Maybe there's a little bit doubt left, but your doubt is outweighed by your belief it's there. Is that not possible?
that is possible. I did not know that for correct assumption, one has to be completely 100%
Okay, yes.
convinced.
Yeah. Correct assumption. Yeah, it's actually sometimes translated as conviction. It's kind of the step before realizing. It's a step before realizing, but there's something before that, just having faith in it. You know, there's still room for doubt. The less doubt you have, of course, the better. But correct assumption is like it's really the step before that, kind of being totally convinced. Yeah. But it's still a good question. It's a good point, because isn't it harder to have faith? But I wonder about, yeah, having faith. Having faith in karma, is that easier than having faith in emptiness? And I would, yeah, I think this course kind of dealing with karma versus emptiness, I think it's easier. Because cause and effect, to some degree, we have some understanding. We don't need to know the subtle types, whereas emptiness is it's such a different kind of concept. Anyway, let's leave it at that. And no, Shmuel, I think that was a good question. You're still raising your hand. Okay. But I think we have to leave it. But please send your question to Dalit, and we can discuss it next time. And I'll continue with the text, of course, next time as well. All right, and we'll have a meditation. So all that's left is to dedicate. Let's dedicate in particular on this day of commemoration. But yeah, so before we recite the prayer, I want to say a few words, as I usually do. So first of all, may whatever positive potential we've accumulated, of course, become a cause for all of us to reach the enlightened state of a Buddha, state that is free from all obscurations, and that enables us to be of the greatest benefit to all sentient beings. And may, of course, the virtue we've accumulated also cause the life of our great masters, His Holiness the Dalai Lama and all other great masters, to be long and healthy. But may the positive potential today from our study and contemplation also become a cause for the 101 kidnapped by the Hamas who are still in Gaza be released now. And may those who lost their lives be well and happy wherever they may be. May their loved ones swiftly overcome their loss and grief and find inner peace. And may those who were physically or mentally injured fully recover and emerge stronger than before. And likewise, may all the other victims who were killed, injured, displaced, or traumatized as a result of the ongoing war, may they also find happiness, well-being, peace, and contentment wherever they are. And may everyone on both sides, especially those in positions of power, cultivate greater wisdom, understanding, compassion, and love for one another. So with this in mind, let's recite the prayer, the dedication prayer. Through the merits of these virtuous actions, may I quickly attain the state of a Guru Buddha and lead all living beings without exception into that enlightened state. In the land encircled by snow mountains, you are the source of all happiness and good. All-powerful Chinrezig, Tenzin Gyatso, please remain until samsara ends. May the precious Bodhi mind not yet born arise and grow. May that born have no decline, but increase forevermore. All right. Thank you very much. Have a great week. Be safe, and I'll see you again next week.
Thank you, Geshe. Take care. Thank you,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Thank
Be
you.
fine.
All
Thank you.
right.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.